All right, I'm going to kick it off with the first question. So, Danny prepared questions for us to ask one another. So, here's one that he wanted me to ask you. What's the first karaoke song that we're going to sing together?
Oh my God. I mean, given we're both entrepreneurially trying to drive, it would be easy to say "Don't Stop Believing" would be a good one, Journey. But I think you and I would probably be more into like Cash It by Megan the Stallion, because I know you're really into that song, and I get a Negroni in me and I'm ready to go. So I'm gonna go with that.
Do you want to start it off, or should we just
Not
save
right
it for
now,
today?
but we'll all be together, I'm sure, at RFIS or something like that, and we can do it then.
Okay,
All
hold you
right.
to it.
So, my first question for you, what was teenage Jeff Alexander like on the cold streets of New York City? If you
well,
and I were
well,
in high school together, do you think we would have been friends?
so, my impression of what teenage Jeff Alexander was like is probably different than what teenage Jeff Alexander was like, right? I mean, I was great. What else was there to say? No, look, I went to the same school from first grade through 12th grade. There were 42 kids in my graduating class. So because I was there every year, I had the ability to not have to go make friends because I was already there. So people, new kids had to meet me more. But I was very outgoing. I was very social. I was very carefree. The 80s were a great time to be a kid and growing up in New York City. And 100% we would have been friends. I might have like put some hair stuff, hairspray to tone down what you have going on right now. But otherwise, we would have gotten along very well, I think.
Interesting. Based on that last comment, I might have thought your sarcasm was overwhelming, but no, I think we would have been friends too. I was similar, driven in school, extroverted, just sort of wanted to be with cool people and hang out and talk about good things. So I think we would have been friends. Yeah, we'll go with that.
In my senior year high school yearbook, they wrote, what do you want to be when you grow up? My answer was, I wanted to be happy. So turned out okay. And that was the kind of attitude I had growing up in high school.
You and
All
John
right.
Lennon. You and John Lennon both. All right.
I guess we're gonna get into real questions now, at least for the next couple. So, Josh, tell us all who's listening in here, name the best piece of advice that you've received in your career, and also maybe share the worst piece of advice.
Yeah. The best piece of advice I ever received, it really came out of a book, believe it or not. And the book was given to me by the Clorox CEO way early on in my career. And if you've never read this book, it's called True North by Bill George. And the entire
It wasn't inject this during COVID, was it?
No, no, no. This was
Okay.
long before, yeah. But True North by Bill George, and what it ultimately talks about is how in your career, hold on, let me let this dog out of here.
Was that the advice? Let the dog out of the room?
No, the advice is don't let your dog in the office right before you're doing a 45-minute Zoom with Jeff Alexander.
Okay.
So, the whole basic concept is in our careers, we all have the things, right? The things are like, I want to be at X number of units open by this year. I want to be making this amount of money by the time I'm 30, this amount of money by the time I'm 40. I want this title by the time I'm 35. All of those things, right? We all have them. And when you're executing against those things, you're following your clock, right? Like you're not really thinking about the why behind what you're doing. You're too in the state of I need to be making more than this amount of money by the time I'm this. I need to make sure I'm promoted before that guy. That's following your clock. The whole point of True North by Bill George is how do you follow your compass, right? Like if you do what feels right, if you chase the opportunities that are going to be the most rewarding, if you lead people the right way and create an environment where they can grow, if you're willing to take risks, smart risks, right? Not reckless risks, but smart risks, even if it means that if you fail, you could have an issue in your current role. You're effectively following your compass, right? And the whole point of the book is follow your compass, not your clock. And ever since I kind of beat that message into myself in my mid to late 20s, I stopped worrying about when am I going to get promoted next. And the next promotion would always come, right? And I stopped worrying about the amount of money I was going to be making. and that the money would start flowing in, because it was less about me just trying to get to these objective moments and more about how do I do things the right way so that people would want me to get to those moments. So I
That's
think that was the
really
best piece of advice I ever got.
that's really interesting. So for the listeners who are out there, if they were to stop worrying about when the money's going to come, when will the money come so that they're prepared? Does
Yeah,
it happen
no,
like the next day?
it's not like that though. It's
I know.
it's
I'm just
just
teasing you.
obviously you can never fully turn off your clock either, right? You have bills to pay, you have investors, you have shareholders. But when we started at Big Chicken, like Sam Stanovich and I never once said we need to sell X number of units in 3 years. We never once said that, right? All we ever said was we want to create such a badass company that anyone who comes to a day of discovery would want to join us, right? We want to build the brand in Shaquille O'Neal's name, image, and likeness in a way that's relevant for people. We want to make sure we have such great food that people want to come back. We want to make sure that we drive loyalty in this really great frenetic way. And what happened was 3 years later, as a result of us approaching it that way, we had a ton of stores under development. We went from 2 units open when we got here to 48 open in 3 years. And we're now global, right? We never sought out for those things. It was the byproduct of the behaviors we were doing.
Great. Very good stuff. All right. You want to share what maybe might be the worst advice you gotten?
I think the worst advice that I've ever gotten, ever,
Aside from doing this podcast.
I was going to say wearing a red bow sweatshirt with non-gel down hair and with Geoff Alexander it's up there. Um, I think the worst advice that I've ever gotten in my career were moments where people said, "Hey, we need you to do this," and the this wasn't authentic to who I was or the brand that I was looking to achieve, right? And you're in this weird moment where if you follow what's being asked of you, you're no longer on your personal brand and you're no longer following your true north. And if you don't follow, people look at you and say, "Hey, man, are you with us or not?" Right.
Right.
And I think I came to the conclusion somewhere in the middle of my career of you got to be with people where they want you to be your authentic self, and you also believe in the authenticity of your organization, so that those conflicts are far and few between, right? Because when you're working with people that have a similar ethos, and that's different than like diversity and inclusion. You could have completely diverse workplace, completely inclusive workplace, but have a very similar ethos in terms of the things you want to achieve, right? I like people who are accountable. I like work-life integration. I like knowing that we can do the right thing all the time, even if it's not the easy thing. I like knowing that there's data behind every single point. Not everyone does, right?
Right.
And it's a matter of aligning yourself with the people that sort of feel the way you do, I think.
Right. Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Um, for you, as a CEO, and you've been a CEO for a long time at this point, right? What would you say is the most important part of your job? And who helped you the most over the years understand that and to become a better leader?
Well, I mean, the most important part of my job is my people, right? Is taking care of and the people is very large, right? From your team to your consumers to the people you're serving, to your vendors, to your partners, as well as, your family and your network of people. I mean, your people, when people say, I take care of my people, is very all encompassing, but it has to start with your employee base, from your home office support staff, through the frontline employees. Uh, but that's the business we're in, right? We're in a very social business to talk to everyone and support everybody. Uh, I've had five great mentors in my life. Two of them I had from the age of 13 to 19, working at a grocery store during my summer vacations. Bob and Frank Whitney, they both passed on, and they really taught me just work ethic. When I joined Let Us Entertain You in 1993, Kevin Brown is now the executive chairman of the company. Really taught me the business and really taught me, how to run a business and treat people. And then there's Rich Melman, the founder, who really taught me quite a bit. about being an entrepreneur. But the person who taught me the most about being a CEO is the head of our private equity fund, John Shulkin, who's the chairman of Wowbow. And what happened in that regards is he's said to me a number of times over the last 6 months, I feel like, and more than anything else, he's like, "You're the CEO of the company. I don't really want to hear what the team thinks or what this person on your team thinks. I want to hear what you think." Because I think a lot of times when you're a leader, you want buy-in from your team. So when you present the ideas, you might say things like, well, the team thinks we should do this, or we're all in agreement that. And what he's really pushed me on is at the end of the day, the CEO makes a decision and don't be influenced by everyone else's thoughts. You can have that be, a check for yourself. You can have that as a point of reference to it. But if you're the CEO, you've been entrusted to make the decision has to be owned by you. So really is teaching me about being a leader of a company. It's been John. It's been a very fun ride with all five of them. But
Yeah, I know from all of our conversations over the years, we're both sort of servant leaders when it comes to our team, but at the same point in time, it's our call at the end, right?
yes, yeah. And you want the call to be right, and you want people to want to follow you, not told to follow you. So finding that balance about when you incorporate the democracy mentality and when it's like, no, here's the way we're going to go.
Yeah.
It's a skill. It's a skill that is to be learned, and I'm still learning it today.
One of my mentors used to say, opinion versus opinion, you like yours, I like mine. Opinion versus fact, fact always wins. Fact
Right.
versus fact, stronger fact wins. And I've always followed that as kind of my guidepost.
Good advice to have.
Yeah.
All right. I got like a 26-point question here for you. So I
Oh,
don't know why
crap.
there's so many points. So we're going to take them one at a time here. When your brand is ready to grow, give us the checklist of the types of things you need to consider or one needs to consider.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're in a franchise brand the way we are, you're running three different businesses simultaneously, right? You're running a franchise business, you're running a food distribution business, and you're running a restaurant operation business, right? So you need to make sure you have the checklist on every single one of those things dialed in. Because as you franchise, they will say to you, hey, where's the breading coming from? When's it coming? Is there enough supply at Cisco? Is there this? Is there that? If you don't have your supply chain set up and you're not ready to truly scale, you're going to fall flat on your face. And it's amazing how many franchisees we've talked to from other concepts that are like, yeah, we're not growing with the other chain we're with because the supply chain's a mess, and our GM has to go to Restaurant Depot every single week, right? So we really have a check, or every day for that matter. We have a checklist really on what do we need to do to be the best possible franchisor? What do we have to do to make sure that our food distribution works? And we're fortunate to partner with Cisco as well as some major Fortune 500 companies on the supplier side, like Tyson and Ecolab and Pepsi, right? And then what do we have to do on the restaurant operations side to make sure that every single person in the four walls of that restaurant are doing the right thing? And understanding what each one of those three checklists look like, and then where are the tension points between the three, that's continuous improvement. You will never try to scale a business from the beginning and say, yeah, 2 units, we had it. We're good to go. Never, right?
Right.
Look, the largest chains in our business can't say that, right? Nothing ever works quite automatic, and the minute it starts to work automatic, something can break down in your tech or in your supply chain or with people or whatnot. So we have a saying in our company, "No sacred cows," and the truth of the matter is we only have two, right? We're focused every day about ensuring our franchisees have the best shot at good unit level economics, and we're not going to embarrass Shaquille. Everything else is how can we continuously improve against those three checklists.
Yeah, I'm going to go off script for 1 second because you just made a comment there about no sacred cows, and then you said you have two. It's really hard to not have sacred cows, or as a founder, especially as a founder, to sort of say, "Oh, we're not going to have the sacred cows." It's a very difficult thing, and I'm sure you agree with that when you're trying to grow a business to put everything on the table.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in consumer packaged goods before this, I was Six Sigma, and in Six Sigma process thinking, they teach you to ask the five whys, right? So, like when I got to the company, it was no, we must use this particular chocolate, local chocolate, this particular chocolate in our milkshakes. Well, why, right? Well, because the quality is good, it's better than anyone else. Well, why, right? And the more you start to untangle the why you're doing what you're doing, the more you realize there's a lot more negotiable than you really think if you have the right goals in mind at the end. If you think
Yeah.
about the two sacred cows I said, one is making sure our franchisees are best set up to win, and the other one is making sure we don't upset the guy who we're doing this all for. That's it. Outside of that, it's really how do we make sure we're putting our best foot forward every single day?
And your sacred cows are about people, right? It's about it's emotion. But
It
how
is.
many times? And I like what your example about the chocolate. When you keep digging down, eventually you're gonna get to someone who doesn't know the why. It's just we've always done it that way. So, all
Right.
right. Second part here. How do you create a culture of growth and also one that makes sure it guards the core equities that made the concept special when it was just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think, you're always refining that. Part of having a culture of growth is this mindset. It goes back to what we were just talking about. What worked for me at 2 units is not going to work for me at 20, and what works for me at 20 won't work for me at 200, and what works for me at 200 won't work for me at 2000. So it's how do you get the right infrastructure for where you are right now? If you add all these people in right at the beginning and you're burning through cash, you're not going to scale. If you want to scale nationally, but you insist on using artisanal ingredient manufacturers that only deliver in one or two states, you're not going to scale, right? So part of that continuous improvement mindset is how do we take that next step and how do we take it safely and how do we take it in a way that feels good? And that means having people who are willing to check ego at the door and come in every day as part of the greater team and say, all right, how can we get food costs a little tighter? How can we shave a little bit off our labor model? How can we make sure our supply chain's ready to go for when we launch in Boston next month? How do we make sure? How do we make sure? How do we make sure? Because ultimately we serve the franchisee so that they can serve their guests. And I think the franchisors that forget that they serve the franchisee, that the franchisee is ultimately their first customer, are the ones who struggle out of the gate. Now that said, it's really hard, right? When we got going, we had a very set view on what we thought the franchisee we wanted to have was. We had to tweak it, right? Because I'm a big believer. It's like in middle school, right? You don't know who you want to date until you've already dated the person you know you don't, right? There's a reason why very few people marry their sixth grade girlfriend, right? Same with franchising, right? We've had a bunch of franchisees quickly early on. Some of them are still with us and thriving and want to grow. Some of them aren't, right? Because we realize, hey, this isn't right for each other. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of the evolution and part of saying, are we set up right for where we are right now? And can we continue to grow overall?
Okay. There's one more part to this question, but then I'm going to add a second question to it. But so put simply, how do you expand while staying true to who you are as a brand?
Yeah, I
I think
think
you've answered, summarize it there.
I think the who you are is not what you're doing, right? Like no one would be like if I said, who is Wow Bao, you wouldn't be like, it's this contract manufacturer. You wouldn't say it's this specific SKU of Bao. It's if I can't have this particular one, our brand's not our brand, right? Um, that's not who we are, right? Like who Big Chicken is about getting a group of people in the corporate environment and in the franchisee environment who believe in doing the right thing, who believe in just telling it like it is and are willing to have tough, candid conversations, who believe simultaneously that we should all love each other. But in order to truly love in a business environment, we need to be accountable to each other and everyone needs to be accountable to the guest. That was the point you made earlier. And we need to remember it starts and ends with the food. Shaquille O'Neal is the best trial mechanism on earth. Our week one sales are unbelievable. No one's going to say, my service was bad, my food was bad, but I love Shaquille so much, I'm just going to keep coming back every single week. Right. So we always have to be pushing for greatness. quite honestly, because Shaquille deserves it, but so does the employees of Big Chicken, our franchisees, and our guests, right? Um, as long as we stay true to those values and we stay true to our vision of creating smiles, because Shaquille's the most memeable smile in the world, right? And we stay true to our vision of 4 wins and making sure that we're winning, our franchisees are winning, our suppliers are winning, and our guests are winning. We can grow in any direction because those little whats, they don't matter. When I got to the company, we had potato salad on the menu, ice cream sandwiches. We had a cookie the circumference of an NBA basketball. Those things aren't there anymore. They weren't scalable and they were no longer right. We're still the exact company we were when I got here 4 years ago, right?
All right, last part I'm going to put in here is an audible. So I'm a small brand, let's say, for the listeners who are out there, and I want to start franchising. Who are the one, two, or three key hires, positions that I need to add to my team that I
To start
probably
franchising?
already, yeah, if I want to start growing and franchising, or even if I just want to scale up,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone just, oh, add headcount. I need someone to do this. Like, where should I hire or who should I hire?
I think that the most important people when you're franchising, you need to have someone who's responsible, that gatekeeper, responsible for franchising. It's different than restaurant operations. You can't ask, like, hey, you run our 5 corporate stores, but can you also figure out franchising? It doesn't work. You need a specific person tasked with franchising because it's a different business vertical, right? You also need a supply chain head. You may not be thinking of that if you have 4 or 5 corporate stores all in the same geographic area where you're working through one US Foods or Cisco warehouse. But you absolutely need that supply chain head. And then you need to put a lot of emphasis, regardless of whether it's in direct people or if it's in indirect, consultants or whatnot. You need to make sure your operations and your training are truly right and that you can codify what you've done, because you're not going to sit in a franchise location every day the way you sit in your corporate store locations, to make sure the ops are right and the training is right. And you need to make sure your legal is really, really dialed in well, right? The FDD has to make sense. Your license agreements, your development agreement has to make sense. The first year you franchise, your largest expenditure will be on legal fees, because that's how long it takes to get that document right. And that document protects everybody. It protects you and it protects your franchisees. So I think that's the answer. You need someone relentlessly dedicated to franchising. You need to make sure your ops and training are really dialed in and truly dialed in to scale. We missed that a little bit in that we had certain energies in our store that was great in our corporate store, but they never entered into the franchise location because we were training on the head, not on the heart, right? And hospitality lives in the heart, right? So now we're working on how do we inject more of the heart into that training, and then it's the legal and the supply chain.
I love it. All right. That
All right,
was my
back to you.
multi-part question. Thank you.
You have one too. So there's an incredible magazine out there. I'm going to lay out on the limb, even though it's not written, and I'm going to guess it is this magazine. It's Danny Klein probably wrote this, but there's an incredible magazine out there that once called you a digital disruptor. And you and I, we've been out a lot together. Disruptor is definitely a word I would use for you, right? We all, as CEOs, get inundated with technology pitches and headlines about this field. And this is also multi-part. How, as a CEO, do you begin to filter out the noise and figure out what's truly disruptive and provides ROI to the business?
So look, we get a lot of different technology groups come to us and ask us to give feedback on something. Will we partner with them? Will we turn it on for the brand? Will we try it out? Like, I'm sure you get it too. And it has to do really three things. It has to make your business better. It has to work for the employees, and it has to work for the guest. And if it doesn't check all three boxes, or if the team that's bringing it to you isn't willing to adjust whichever box is being missed, then I don't spend any time on it. If I see value here and I think, hey, this could really work and make my employees' jobs easier, this could really help make the business move better, and the guest is going to benefit from the effects of this, then we try to make it work and we try to test pilot. If one of those three isn't there, I go back to whoever the tech people are and say, hey, I need this part to be better. And that's sort of how we funnel it out.
I'm going to go off script for a minute, because on a couple of moments, especially like with NFTs and the metaverse and a couple other areas, you really leaned out and said, I'm going to be the first of our kind to take that bold step, right? It's one thing to say, hey, how do I take it one step further? But it's the same sort of thing. I'm just kind of trying a small functional shift on something that's been done. You've done some really revolutionary things with WowBow, including really your business model is sort of revolutionary in how you've gotten at it. You were sort of doing the virtual ghost kitchen thing before anybody else. What drives that for you? Because not everyone would be willing to take that first step out into the unknown.
I've been very fortunate. I talked about my mentors earlier, that I've been given a long leash. And if you're brought up to be an entrepreneur, if your investors, your partners, your boss, whoever it is, believes in you and trust the decisions you're going to make, or that you're willing to fail fast, right? You're willing to say, hey, I screwed up, and pull it back. That allows you to think further out of the box. And I think it's so important that leaders of today need to look outside of our industry, right? And that's where answers are. If you look at other industries, whether it's beauty, lifestyle, technology, banking, whatever it may be, there are other businesses doing things in ways that we don't, but maybe that way could pull into the way we do things. And you just have to be open to it, right? And that's more than anything else, is the willingness to say, I screwed up, as well as the willingness to say, no, I can do that and make it better. And I've always liked being early to the game. When you asked earlier, what was Geoff Alexander like as a kid? Whatever call time was, right? If like, hey, you and I are going to go and hang out tonight, we're meeting at 7 o'clock, I was there at 6:30, right? I was always early everywhere because I didn't want to be late. I didn't want to possibly have you show up before me and miss something. I wanted to, I sort of like to be there before you and, jive you a little bit that, oh, you were running late, whatever it may be. I come from the mantra, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And that sort of plays into then how we do things within WowBow. We want to be early to the game on everything, and we want to adapt and adopt before other people have a chance.
Yeah, it's something I appreciate about you. You and I are normally one drink in before the call time for anyone else yet there, because I'm the same way.
Don't
The
tell
final,
don't tell anyone how many drinks we end up having, though.
it's two. The final piece of this question, um, one thing for you to step out. How do you get your entire team to step out with you and get buy-in all the way down the organization?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll tell you why it's a great question. Because I don't get everyone to buy in, but that's where you have to have enough belief that you're making the right call. And when you make enough right calls, then people are more apt to say, okay, I'll give Geoff this, or, whatever it may be. Look, I don't put a slush fund into the budget that's like Geoff's play money to go and do crazy things. I try to be strategic about what we've done, and I have a good track record that the ideas that we've pursued have paid off, right? So it doesn't just happen. What you have to do is, and I think there's a fine line between passion and anger, right? And I've been accused for years that my passion has come across as being angry and attacking people. You have to find a way to be passionate and communicate your belief without hosing down every person in front of you.
Right.
And you can't walk into a room of 10 people and say, hey, guys, I really think we need to do NFTs, because you're going to lose that. You got to go to the person you think is most likely going to be an ally to you and sell them on it. And now you got two people. And now you go to the next person and you get their buy-in. And then you find the person who's a little not so on board. And maybe you send that first person who you got on board to go talk to that person as well, right? You got to build an alliance. And that only comes with, depending on how much of a democracy you run your business. If there's 8 leaders, then you got to get 8 people to buy in, or maybe you run your company on, 5 outweighs 3, the majority wins, whatever it may be. But for us, it's, when you have a proven track record, you get to go take more liberty.
Yeah. I think too, if your people trust you, right? Because if they trust you, they may say, I don't necessarily agree with this decision. I may not also understand this full decision, but man, I trust Geoff, right? So if Geoff is this passionate about it, I'll lean in and see where this goes.
There's a John Hughes movie from the early 90s, maybe late 80s, that I'm sure no one ever saw, called Some Kind of Wonderful. And there's a line in the movie that's trust is the basis of all relationships.
Yeah.
And I've always sort of held on to that. So
Figures
there
a
you
guy
go.
from the north part of Chicago would be quoting a famous movie director from the north part of Chicago.
All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I have an off script question for you. And as I ask the off script question, I'm actually going to turn my camera off and let you answer it on your own. So you're
Oh,
not
sure.
distracted. And then I'll come back when you finish the question. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Assuming you could put together your all-star team. I don't necessarily need you to pick favorites from restaurant people, whatever it may be. And I don't care where these people come from. But what would you got Shaquille O'Neal behind you, so you're used to the basketball reference. Give me your all-star team, 3, 4, 5 other people. And what would make that team? How do those people interact together to create that all-star team for you? And then a second part of the question is, where would you place this team? Is everyone remote? Is everyone, hey, we got to be in the middle of the country? Like, why would you place this team in that place to get the best out of them?
That's a brutal question. Brutal question. I think ultimately, as I approach that question, it comes down to who is the best at everything you would want to achieve, because you would need to grow out the team past your starting five, right? So I think that when I think about Shaquille O'Neal, I think Shaquille O'Neal is one of the best guideposts of any individual I've ever met. I'm privileged to work with him every day. He would be on that starting team for sure. When I think about vision, and I'm not just saying this because you're on this call, I think the two people I would consider for my starting role on vision would be yourself, quite honestly, because I think Wow Bao has really been disruptive for the restaurant industry in all of the right ways. I'm proud to wear the sweatshirt, almost as proud as I am to wear a big chicken one, which if I knew you weren't going to wear a big chicken sweatshirt, we may have had a different wardrobe choice this morning. The other person I think is really solid on vision is Perry Rogers, who's one of my board members and agent to Shaquille and Jason Tatum and Usher and others. And what I appreciate the most about Perry is he's maniacal on his what, but is malleable on his how, right? At 30,000 feet, he is always right, but he trusts the team to come back to him on how we're going to execute behind that how. I think from an operations perspective, someone like Greg Majewski really is best in class in terms of being able to understand what needs to happen operationally to make it all happen. In terms of being a big corporate cheerleader, Sam Stanovich, who I'm privileged to have with me every single day, one of the best corporate cheerleaders. No one drives more belief in an organization than him. When it comes into long-term thinking, Jimmy and Chatsy make all the sense in the world, from branded hospitality and how they're looking at what will the tech stack look like, not today, but in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And finally, you would need someone who would help bring all the right people to fit this crazy eclectic group of characters we just set up. We're going to need someone like Helen Lau or Alice Elliott on the team as well to make sure that we're attracting the best talent and looking at it from all angles. So thank you for giving me the hardest question ever, and I greatly apologize to anyone I didn't mention. Still love you all, but yeah, that's what I think.
All right. Because you answered that so well, this is for you, Josh, and Big Chicken. I don't know if I can get the
Amazing.
head on because I can't see it so well.
Yeah, I'm
But
just
I
glad
went to
that when you put it on
Wisconsin,
beforehand, it
where
was
they're
up your
very
neck.
famous for the chicken dance. So I do that for you.
That's Jeff Alexander dressed as a chicken, in case Danny just pulls
I
out
don't know
that
how to get
unknown.
out of this thing, but I do that for you.
I really, really appreciate it. I guess I now have to ask you a question. Mine's not going to be as hard of a question, I think. But like anything, you and I, we talk all the time about what each other are doing, what others are doing, etc. Who are the people right now that you look at and you're like, I just love watching what they're doing because they're the disruptors in the QSR world today?
You know, uh, that's a really good question, and I think that well, look, not to give Danny a lot of credit here as he sits behind the scenes watching this, and I hope he's still recording it. And I turned this whole thing off by now. But I rely on the Danny Kleins of the world to show us what everyone else is doing. Because one thing the restaurant industry is not good at, they're not good. We are not good at promoting ourselves of what we do behind the scenes. We're all good at like saying, "Oh, here's our value meal and what's going on." But the work that's done by the media in our industry to highlight whether it's a real small opportunity or it's a real big opportunity, I think is very cool. So I just want to give a shout out to Danny Klein, to Sam Oaches, to Cheryl Chancellor. I mean, all these different people in the media who are sharing stories to make us aware of what's happening.
And most importantly, they bring us all together, right? I
Yes,
mean, you and I really got to know each other with these guys, right? With the restaurant media at different conferences, and we got to talking and realized we had a lot of common ground and became close friends as a result of it. They really are
yeah,
the connective tissue of the industry.
100%. They're that center of the spoke of the wheel. But if I had to pick a couple of groups I'd watch, I'd always watch Chipotle. I definitely watch what's going on with Starbucks during their turnaround right now. I think it's going to be a great ride to watch them and have a lot of fun. I really like what Andre Venner does at Doghouse with Jake Paul, what he's doing from an influencer standpoint. Um, I just think there there's Lee Kimball out at Moto Pizza in Seattle. Shout out to him for what he's doing with technology and robotics. There's so much fun to watch. The greatest thing you can do as a restaurateur is when you travel, fly in 3 hours earlier than you need to, or fly out 3 hours later than you need to, and just go walk around and see the local restaurants that are out there because the ideas that you will get will be so fantastic. I
Yeah.
just think it's a lot of fun. A lot
The,
of fun.
the two I would add to your list, I would add what Troy Hooper's doing at Pepper Lunch, because that's a
100%.
concept that doesn't really exist in any way, shape, or form in QSR. And I really think what the Chiba's toasted subs guys are doing is really cool because it's like you walk into their locations and it feels like you're in that dive sandwich shop in your college town, right? Like you
Yeah.
back in Madison or me back in Ithaca, and yet it's scaled. It's really kind of this cool, irreverent environment that's hard to pull off in a scaled environment. So those
Yeah.
are the two I'd add to your list.
Yeah. 100%. All right. Last question I'm going to ask you, even though it's not in here and you can ask me too, but who do you nominate? Who's the one person you nominate? And I'll give you my person I nominate to fill these seats next.
Yeah, I would nominate. I'd nominate Greg Majewski. Quite honestly, I think he's moving in so many different directions so quickly. It would be interesting to get him here with another restaurant CEO. Who do you nominate?
Well, I can't nominate him now.
Oh, you were going to nominate Greg too? What if we have
Well,
Greg interview Greg? We do like that a weird little
that
duality
would be
thing.
very funny. But I'd probably have to throw out there that uh, uh, I think a different perspective. I'd probably go with Kelly, the CMO over at Toast, because she's got her hands in so many different things that's going on in the industry. And Toast is really changing the way restaurants can interact with consumers from handheld to the way that the things they're doing behind the scenes. It's really interesting. And to have someone on that side, I think sharing what they're doing with someone like a Greg who's got so many different multiple concepts going on could be a lot of fun. So Kelly Sennett, I think, would be a lot of fun.
So did we just create for Danny like the two people in the chairs get to pick the next two people in the chairs?
Well,
That would
that
actually
would
be
be a
the
lot of fun, but I think it would be really terrible if we did that and then he didn't pick either one of them. Then that sends a different message.
yeah,
So
Danny, our
pressure's on there,
reputations are on the
Danny.
line. We're counting on you.
All right. Well, Josh, hey, I had a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you wearing the Bow sweatshirt.
I had a lot of fun too. Thank you for putting on the chicken costume. You may be the original Big Chicken.
For the record, you act like I don't wear that every day in my office. Why do you think I have one?
Look, low judgment, my friend. Low judgment. You know how much I love you, brother.